Hello everyone, this is Disha Meswania from JFrog. I am working currently as a customer support manager here, and today we are going to talk about fundamentals of DevOps automation. So let's get started with the basics of DevOps, right? If you think I'm going to speak about the whole DevOps infinity workflow, what is Dev, what is Ops, and how we are going to iterate over each of these phases, totally no. That's not what I'm going to focus on today. My agenda for today is going to be mainly related to the industry experience itself, as in how uh, high-performing DevOps team across the world do so, and how are they evaluated based on their performance. Then we are going to talk about some common problems and solutions of the STLC. Uh, Over here, I would like to talk about it from different perspectives because each of these personas think about their problems and solutions very differently, right? So we are going to talk about some problems from developers, release or operations perspective, and then finally from a management's perspective. Then we are going to talk about what are the consolidated approach that we can take towards the solutions of these problems rather than seeing as each one of them as a siloed solution. And finally, we are going to talk about streamlining DevOps with JFrog platform. Uh, Basically, we are going to talk about the JFrog way of dealing with the problems. So let's get started. I want to basically first of all talk about DORA metrics. This is DevOps research organization that is led by Google team. Uh, this is a team of researchers that are going across various DevOps practitioners and researching to get some idea about what do they think is working best for their industry and the companies that they are working in, right? So based on this, they divide the category of DevOps performance of a particular organization into low, medium, high, and elite performances. The elite performance results are basically based on these four criteria: the deployment frequency, lead time for change, time to restore the service, and change failure rate, right? However, if you see the current elite performance results, the one that we are going to look at is going to be very high frequency deployments, basically almost on demand. These are organizations that can do multiple deploys per day, right? Then moving on, there are organizations where the lead time for changes, once we have decided to make a change and started coding on it till the time it is in production, this is the overall lead time, right? So the lead time for change is also less than 1 day, which is marvelous, right? That's where we want to be. And then comes the next part, which is time to restore a particular service if it is down. This is less than 1 hour. Ideally, the lower the time, the higher we are able to keep up the business continuity, right? And finally, the change failure rate. This basically means if there is an issue while deploying a particular fix that you are trying to do in production, what is the failure rate, and how fast can we recover over that is one of the primary things, right? So the failure rate, the lower the better. And with such organizations which are performing as elite performers, we see that the failure rate is also less than 0 to 15%, uh, in about 0 to 15% range, right? So what I'm trying to say over here is why these metrics? Because based on these metrics, we have been able to see that there are various organizations that perform at different levels: low, medium, high, and elite. But the elite performers over the years has been decreased, right? How has this happened? Whereas the DevOps focus is definitely increasing. If you see the medium performers, this is definitely increasing over the years, right? So the main reason I believe for this is there are several factors to considering it. The DevOps research team also changed a few factors later on after 2022, and that's why the metric doesn't include those, because the comparison will not be an apple to apple match, right? However, one of the main factors to consider is uh, based on our DevOps delivery pipeline, we did some things right originally and then slowly started degrading on it, right? I believe this accounts to us talking about what are the current problems in the SDLC. And there comes my next slide, which talks about these common problems and solutions from various perspectives. Let's talk about the problems from a developer's perspective, right? So I believe as a developer, most of us would be thinking about strategic misalignment. When I'm given a particular thing to work on, suddenly the R&D and product conflict comes in. Somebody changes the requirement, and then I have to work on something definitely new, right? I believe this also includes some kind of lack of visibility towards what the product management is looking at versus what the R&D management is looking at. And overall, this all includes monitoring and feedback loops from various customers or various stakeholders that we have. Then comes resource and tool options. There is always this dilemma versus of too less versus too many, right? Say, for example, when we talk about having open source tools, there's so many of them, and we are always confused about which one to use when it comes to our implementation piece. And the vice versa, when it comes to enterprise tools, we want to be conscious about where we are using it and we want to use it right? Say, for example, there are integration issues or tools issues that comes into place. We want to be able to choose the right tool to have minimum possible issues over there. Of course, it's not going to be possible to have a tool which is going to seamlessly integrate with everything and you will have no issues at all, right? Then comes the security and compliance. I believe this is one common thing which is going to be the need of an hour. Whether it's a developer, a release or operations person, or whether it's management, everybody needs to look at the security and compliance. Finally, environment and configuration differences. So from a developer's perspective, I've developed something. Ideally, it should work in every environment. And because there are some differences in the kind of environments we have created, staging is slightly different than what the pre-prod is, and that is slightly different than what the production is. My code doesn't work everywhere, right? So this is another problem. And finally, deployment failures. My code works in my environment, but it doesn't in the final environment that it is supposed to work with, right? So these are the common problems. And over here, I'm going to talk about just a few solutions to it, which I think are one of the most common solutions that we have applied to in our day-to-day lives. So say, for example, when it comes to strategic misalignment, we all had such problems, and the common solution to it is don't work siloed, let's work as a team. Let's product and R&D work hand in hand and make sure that we are creating some regular scrum meetings to go over the requirements and creating this as a DevOps loop, right? Uh, it works. However, it's not very consistent. Then comes the resource and tool options. When there is too many versus too less of a dilemma, all of them will have a simple solution where you take up one solution, ensure that there is a plugin or there is a way to integrate it, and then you expand that solution over to the rest of the organization, right? Same with security and compliance. When it comes to security and compliance from a developer's perspective, he is going to integrate the application security part, understand what are the vulnerabilities out of this application, and as long as we are fixing these vulnerabilities, we are safe. Finally, when it comes to environment and configuration differences, all of us have heard about using a configuration provider, making sure that everything is being coded, using infrastructure as code, basically, using Terraform, Ansible, whatever the organization is working with, and making sure that all of the environments are maintained in a similar way. And when it comes finally to deployment failures, there are various ways that organizations implement, such as let's do a blue-green deployment. Let's make sure that one of the instances which is already working fine is not being impacted by our deployment process, right? Some organizations do an A/B testing rather, and make sure that the overall deployment, which is finally going into the production, is properly tested and gone ahead with. And my favorite, which I believe most of the organizations kind of have adopted, is canary release. We test out the version with a very small audience, which is okay with testing the product's release, and then once the deployment is final, we roll it out in phases incrementally to more and more set of audiences, right? Then the same common problems and solutions, let's think about that from a different perspective, which is from a release or an operations person perspective, right? So when it comes to their challenges, I believe one of the main things to deal with is lead time. They want to ensure that everyone falls in the elite category of the DevOps research. And for that to happen, the lead time has to be less, which ideally means there has to be more and more optimizations in the release pipeline. Similarly, there can be inconsistencies in configurations and environments. This is not only a problem for developers, obviously it is also a problem for release or operations. And they want to maintain similar environments as much as possible throughout, right? Then comes the scalability and performance issues. Particular product or a piece of code which is working just fine within a limited set of users, or a limited set of functionality testing, might not work the best when it is tested against scalability and performance, right? So that is another issue that the deployment uh, or operations people have to deal with. And again, security and compliance, because this is something that we cannot miss for sure. Finally, planning backup and recovery. When it comes to a release team or an operations team that is maintaining a particular application, we want to ensure that there is always a backup plan or a plan in action to take in case something goes south, right? So over here also, we are going to talk about some siloed solutions that has been implemented based on my experience. Say, for example, when it comes to lead time to focus, most of the organizations go ahead with creating a pipeline, a streamlined process, where you are taking the overall code, making sure that the builds that are running the code are run from a particular CI tool, and most of it is centralized, right? Then you package these applications separately, make sure that they are coming together as one, and the distribution is happening wherever it's required from that point, right? All of this in an automated fashion. So does this work? Yes, in most of the cases it does. However, the optimizations or the automations can be drastically improved over a period of time, right? Then comes the inconsistency in configurations and environments. As we discussed earlier, for operations, it's going to be using the Terraform provider or using the same Ansible scripts to make sure that everything that is being coded is going into a configuration management tool, and this tool is the one which is setting up the environments, right? So that there's minimum of a discrepancy between different environments. Just that when it comes to operations, they also need to deal with what kind of environments are they getting deployed to. It can be cloud, it can be on-prem. So that's what the last icon says over here, which says it can be basically hybrid environments, right? Then comes the scalability and performance issues. I believe this is mostly about testing, ensuring that we are then scaling it up either manually or dynamically wherever it's required. So, monitoring, scaling, and then finally ensuring that we are creating enough replicas of whatever deployment unit we have to ensure that the performance and scalability is attained, right? Finally comes security and compliance. From an operations perspective, I believe it's not only about application security, it's also about the security of the overall pipeline that they are deploying. So they are going to bring in a security persona for sure, who's going to look at the application end to end, basically from the time it has been started to create till the time it is in production. This security team is going to help us understand what is the malicious code in the overall pipeline and what are the vulnerabilities that can be exploited as well. And finally, after this point, we can say that the application is secure, right? Finally, planning backup and recovery. This is a very important piece for any operations person and the trickiest, I believe, as well. With different applications, there are different ways to do it. One of the most common ways, which I've highlighted here, is to ensure you are not only doing multiple on-prem servers, but also deploying enough on cloud, making sure that everything that you're doing is configurable and can be recovered very easily on both of these platforms, whether it is on-prem or cloud, right? Then comes the management problems. Now, when we talk about management problems, the problems are slightly different when it comes from the developers or the operations perspective. Management mainly thinks about it very high level and want to ensure the most business value comes out of whatever we have been trying to do, right? So over here comes balancing speed versus the quality of the product, measuring and demonstrating return on investment, ensuring that the security and compliance is maintained everywhere throughout the phases, ensuring change and risk management is taken care of, and finally managing technical debt, right? So let's talk about some common solutions to the management problems as well. So when it comes to balancing speed and quality, just like the scalability aspect goes, I believe balancing the speed versus quality of work also goes in a similar way. Monitoring, ensuring wherever a scalability is required, putting in more resources, or ensuring that we are able to increase the capability of the resources. And the same happens with creating replicas as well, right? Ensuring that we have backup plans everywhere so that you have no single unit of failure. The same when it comes to measuring and demonstrating ROI. When it comes to return on investment, one of the most primary factors to look at is we are having monitoring all over the place where we are able to easily understand from real data where exactly are the problems and how can we fix those problems. Uh, Also, based on this, we are going to see what are the primary areas where we can probably increase the business and ensure that the cost incurred is on the lower side, right? Then comes the security and compliance. As a management persona, you definitely want to ensure that the security team which is taking care of the security overall for the whole organization, is being involved in the whole process from the beginning till the production of the code release, and ensuring that your application is secure from both malicious packages as well as from any vulnerabilities that can come into picture. Finally, managing change and risk. this is something which is done in different organizations in different ways. Many organizations tend to do this by trying to implement a lot of policies, a lot of approval process on the way. You want to ensure that whatever is going into production is going via a particular process and not happening directly on the production system. And then again, it's something which you want to make as a standard practice, and you want to include this into your DevOps pipeline, right? Uh, and then comes managing the technical debt. This is very important. One of the most neglected pieces is ensuring that the technical debt is being taken care of, right? While we go ahead and keep on releasing our new versions of the product, make sure that there are new features or new products also coming in, new business coming in every way. Managing what has been coded and ensuring to do a validation of whether it is up to date or not is very important. This also finally leads to a reduction in cost overall. So managing technical debt primarily includes at least taking some conscious time out to look at the technical debt, understand where exactly are the changes required, and start putting in efforts to do these changes, keep monitoring, and finally reduce the cost overall. So there are various siloed solutions that we spoke about. Now, let's talk about what is the best when it comes to siloed versus a consolidated approach, right? So, in my opinion, when it comes to a consolidated approach, this definitely gives you an added advantage because first, you are going to go for a approach which is platform based, not only focusing on one particular problem and a solution, but looking at the bigger picture, going to help you fix a lot of problems, right? So over here comes the cost optimization, which the consolidated approach follows. Then comes the single source of truth. Basically, when you follow a consolidated approach, you are going to have one place to look at for everything end to end. Same when it comes to automation, since everything is present in one particular solution, you'll be able to automate easily, taking different pieces into consideration and using a consolidated tool which can help you automate across the platforms easily as well, right? Then comes the single point of support. Basically, with a consolidated approach or a consolidated solution, you don't need to go to different organizations or different support teams to find out your answers. You have one particular organization that is going to help you with it. It helps you also capture the data in the right format as required. And finally, it allows you to have an enhanced depth and breadth in terms of understanding what is working well, what not for your organization. So when we talk about the consolidated approach, let's talk about the frog way. The JFrog way of dealing with with this consolidated approach is as per this. So we have a tool called JFrog Artifactory, which is like the bread and butter of JFrog, one of the most primary tools that we have. And how it helps is there are several uh, phases of the SDLC that are covered with the whole JFrog platform in place, right? So say, for example, you have several build tools, you are declaring your new dependencies over there, and your dev team is going to now resolve these dependencies via these build tools. Artifactory provides one particular feature, which is called a remote repository, that helps you cache as well as proxy these repositories, these dependencies via the internet repositories. Both of them has their own benefits, right? Proxying will allow you to have a centralized place to ensure that everything that is coming into your organization is coming via one particular tool, which is Artifactory. And caching is going to help you make these processes faster in the successive runs. Then comes resolving these dependencies. As I mentioned, remote repositories is the one that is helping you do that. Committing these changes to your version control system. Now, your version control system can also be integrated with the JFrog platform, basically meaning whenever you're doing a particular pull request, you can ensure that the security is being taken care of. You can ensure that if you want to use this pull request to start a particular workflow, you can do so. Just like we do it with a CI server as well, right? Making sure that any changes in the VCS or a commit directly triggers your CI process. Then on the CI process side, we have several different tools that JFrog provides integration to. It also has its native tools such as JFrog CLI, JFrog pipelines, which are pretty popular and flexible enough to work with different tools or different build tools that are needed. Over here, we are going to resolve the dependencies one final time, because now we are going to build the process via CI in place, and along with it deploy some artifacts and bill of materials, build information, all of these from the CI server back to Artifactory. Now, all of this information that is deployed is again served in different ways within the Artifactory. There is one entity called the build information entity that holds overall information of the build. And then there are local repositories which holds your artifacts separately based on how you've deployed it. The bill of materials is something which is very interesting, because this goes directly feeded into the security pipeline and ensure that all of your software bill of materials is being scanned and you get a final output of what is vulnerable, what is not out of it. Finally, because a lot has happened so far, you want to ensure that whatever has happened, the relevant information from this, right, which is the metadata of all of these bills or artifacts, needs to be collected. And you want to ensure that your QA or QC that is in place, whichever is taking care of your quality, these tools are also integrated with the pipeline, ensuring that both ways you are contributing to the metadata from the QA system as well as from Artifactory back to the QA system, right? Finally, we want to ensure that once all of this is done, we are able to promote our artifacts from one stage to another, and we are able to roll out for internal distributions where needed, right? So this promotion of artifacts from one stage to another and rolling out the deployments in different environments can also be automated via different tools in JFrog. One of the most common tools used is JFrog CLI, and the others are JFrog pipeline that can help you do so. There are various provisioning tools that you might be using during this whole setup as well. And all of those integrations are also supported by JFrog. Finally, you want to ensure everything is in place, everything is looking good, and there's one single platform that is ensuring your end-to-end SDLC, right? And then comes the deployment to production. Similar to this whole JFrog software supply chain platform taking care of your end-to-end deployment, we also have something called security and compliance infused throughout the SSC. How do we do this is via different by dividing the whole SSC into different phases. One of them is before the creation of the artifact. Over here, we have something called curation in place. Then comes creation of the artifact itself, and finally during the consumption of the artifact, right? There are various tools that are employed over here. To name a few, we have IDE integrations. We have curation as a product, which helps you identify issues within the dependencies, anything coming from a public repo. Then comes creating a package, ensuring that your Git commit is basically being scanned as well. And over here comes Frogbot, which helps you do this. Then creation of the package itself via various tools. If you're using Artifactory and X-ray in a combination here, there are various stages where X-ray can do the scanning. It can be a build scan, which basically means whatever CI tool you are using can be integrated with X-ray, which is our security and compliance tool. And that helps you identify any issues within your SBOM during the build cycle itself. Then comes the repo scanning, which basically means that at a repository level, wherever your artifacts are deployed, you can keep scanning them over a period of time, so that whenever there are new vulnerabilities coming into place, also you are able to identify those. All of this is being done via signed pipeline using JFrog pipelines, so you can ensure that your security throughout the pipeline is also being taken care of, right? And then comes your promotion phases and your release phases, which can also be scanned via the X-ray, which is called release scanning or release bundle scanning in different terms. Finally, these signed release bundles are the ones which are signed via GPG keys being distributed from your JFrog platform to different consumption units, right? So when it comes to end-to-end security, you have everything in one place, a one-stop shop for ensuring that the security of your artifacts from code to production is being taken care of. Finally, let's talk about some items that we as JFrog believe are going to be the future of DevOps. We believe one of the primary focus of the industry is going to be driving the automation. All of the DevOps is going to be driven via automation in the future. Another key factor is going to be AI ML. Security has been an important piece since forever. However, the last few years have made us all realize that it is going to be an important piece going forward as well. Then comes the cloud native development, which is now where the world is going, right? And the same happens with microservices architecture. The wave started a few years ago, but it's something which is going to continue for a longer time. Then comes GitOps and ISC, making sure infrastructure as code and GitOps are going to gain some prominence over the period of time. Then monitoring and observability, ensuring that cultural and organizational changes keep coming. Change is the only constant, right? So all of this is going to keep coming, and edge applications are going to take over. The more and more of IoT comes into picture, obviously edge applications are going to be a primary area of focus in the upcoming years. So that's all. Now let's summarize the overall discussion. We have been talking about various things. However, I believe a few points to take away are going to be: it's important to consolidate your DevSecOps practices. Uh, One of the things which is most important is security. You must have it at every step. A few things about visibility and monitoring. Although it seems like it's too much of a setup and we need to do a lot of things, these are painkillers. These are going to help you resolve small to big issues, all of them in a way, in a various ways, right? And finally, DevSecOps, it's not one particular tool or one particular approach. It's a mindset. It's something that needs to be employed at different levels, whether it's a developer to an operations or a particular management persona. All of them, if they adapt to this mindset, DevSecOps is going to be easy. Finally, there's a small QR code over here which you can scan and get started with JFrog. If you like the JFrog solution that we just presented, and try it out on your end. Thank you.